and welcome to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where Team Needham discusses everything healthcare. I am your host, Shawn Needham, along with my wonderful wife, Janet, and our producer, Lindsay. And today we have the honor and pleasure of welcoming back Carl Duvall and Tosha Stafford. Carl has been on a weight loss journey for over a year now, and he is going to continue to share his story with us. He had bariatric surgery 8 weeks ago, and if you guys remember, we followed up with him like a week after his surgery, and we also did a show a few weeks before his surgery. And Tosha Stafford is an expert in bariatric surgery. She is also a patient, and she helps hundreds and thousands of patients all over the United States with bariatric surgery. So welcome on the show, you guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us again.
Yes. So Carl, tell us a little bit about your progress over the last 8 weeks.
8 weeks has been, good. I'm almost down 50 since surgery, 49 as of this morning. My goal was to be at 50 by the 4th of next month. That'll be 2 months. 2 months on the calendar from when I came home from the hospital. I came home right at 600. So I'd like to be down to 550 in the 2 months since being home. It's good. The thing that's messing with me a little bit is the first 2 weeks when I got home, I lost 13 pounds the first week, 13 pounds the second week. Since then, 24 or 23 in the next 6 weeks. But I think, I'm realizing more that was probably a lot of fluid weight that they pump you full of the IVs constantly when you're in the hospital and all that. And I've had some stalls for a couple of weeks here and there. But 50 pounds in 2 months it's not slow, but I still get frustrated just because I'm an instant gratification guy. And I've had this, body that I haven't been able to escape for so long that I just want to get out of it and get going, but it'll get there. I need to know it's a process, which I do, but a lot of times my head gets in the way of that.
Well, you're making progress, and that is the best thing, and one step forward at a time. So congratulations, Carl, on your weight loss. Tosha, do you have any comments on Carl's progress and his thoughts?
Yeah, Carl, stalls are common post surgery, right? Because the amount of energy that you're taking in with food versus exiting out of your body kind of determines your weight loss, right? But for us, we're bariatric, so we're almost in. Like if somebody was to normally diet you, they would have you eating quite a few thousand calories a day, probably more like 2,800, even 3,000 calories a day. But we're bariatric, so it's really hard to consume that many calories, right? So we're kind of more like in starvation mode. So the body will adjust because it's figuring out, because before surgery, right, it's like it was used to taking in all these calories and being able to perform all these wonderful functions that our body does. And then after surgery, it's a shock factor because the body's like, well, wait a minute, brakes on, like, how much are you feeding me? And so it has to kind of adapt to that because it still has its functions that it has to perform. It has to keep your vision, it has to keep your hair, it has to keep your skin healthy, your heart beating, your lungs breathing, all the functions our body does. So it's common to have these stalls. So don't get discouraged by that. The most important thing really during the stall process is to really focus on the habits and behaviors. Does my plate look like it should for a bariatric patient? And your body will kick up losing again. It will keep losing that first year and a half. The weight will just fall off. It really will. 25 pounds a month is freaking fantastic.
That's right. That's almost a pound a day. And Carl, I see when you said losing your hair, you pointed to your head. So I'm glad you still have a sense of humor. That is awesome. And that's what keeps us all going is we have to add laughter throughout our day. So I love it. And I was kind of thinking the same thing when she said that. I'm like, well, he does have a lot of hair here.
Yeah, that thing flew the coop a long time ago.
Okay. So, Janet, do you have questions for
I
Carl?
do. So, I know when you first started eating after your surgery, Carl, it was pretty limited to liquid diet, but I'm assuming now that has changed for you. What does your food look like today that you can intake?
As of right now, I can basically eat anything that I can cut with a fork. Anything I don't need a knife for, that's the stage I'm at right now. Up until Thursday, then they said I don't have limitations, so I can start eating. Like basically right now, I don't eat like a steak or pork chop or something like that I would need a knife to cut. A lot of chicken, tuna, a lot of eggs. Not a lot of eggs, but eggs in the morning. Usually 2 eggs and 2 pieces of, or 2 like turkey sausage links maybe, which is so weird. I mean, I made a post last week that it's confusing to me because this is a completely different program than what I was doing when I lost the weight prior. All I did then was basically I knew what I could eat as far as quality foods, but all I concentrated on was calorie intake. Now that's a struggle because it's nowhere near what I was taking in before. I was doing about, I wanted to stay between 24 and 1800 a day was what my goal was. Now I'm lucky if I hit 1,000, maybe 1,200 on a good day. And just getting enough protein in your day, that's like the major thing in your diet is just getting proteins. They want 80 grams of protein a day, which is hard when you have, a smaller stomach. Plus, I'm getting better at putting the liquids in. I finally got up to about 64 ounces a day, which has been a real struggle for me. So, I mean, not even the same program as I was doing before. So it's confusing. And that's another reason why it's frustrating. Like she was saying, you don't take in nearly as many calories as you did before, but the weight's actually, like I was losing at this rate sometimes, before when I was taking in 2,000 calories, 1,200 or 2,200 a day. But so that makes it a little bit frustrating. I don't know what I was expecting, but I mean, if I just look at the overall picture, I'm doing just fine. It's just.
So help also expand on how not just your eating habits, but how has your day-to-day life changed as far as getting around the house? Have you been able to get out at all? How have those things changed?
Now that I've started to be able to actually get more protein and actually eat normally, I'm getting my energy back. I know when I first got back, like a couple weeks after surgery, I attempted to go outside in the garage, and when I came back up the stairs, it was completely different than before surgery. I had zero energy. I could barely get up the stairs, and now that's not a problem. I've taken a couple of drives, not very far, just to get out of the house. My mental energy is not matching up with my physical energy yet. So that's a mind game. I want to go do more. My body just doesn't allow it yet, either just size wise or energy level wise. So that's a kind of a balance that I'm trying to get here, that I want to just go out and go. Because mentally, I want to. Before, when I was at my heaviest, I didn't want to do anything. I took all I could just get out of bed in the morning. And now I actually want to go do stuff. There was I think this last week in Metallica had even a drive-in, they did a drive-in concert deal at the drive-in theaters, a couple around here. And I wanted to go do that. Mentally, I wanted to go do that. I know I wouldn't be able to sit in a car and not be in pain for that long. But just things like that. Just getting around the house is a lot easier. I don't have any struggles really doing anything around the house. But yeah, it's just my body's not quite where I want. where my mind wants it to be. But I mean, they'll
Tasha,
eventually.
well, thanks for sharing that, Carl. And Tasha, you being the expert and working with lots of people in these same situations, do you have anything to comment about the mind-body thing?
I do. After bariatric surgery, we go through body dysmorphia, right? Where we don't quite identify with ourselves as we're losing the weight. So Carl, how did you envision yourself when you looked at yourself in the mirror at 713 pounds, and then you look at yourself in the mirror, today at 551? Do you see a disconnect, or are you connecting along your weight loss journey?
I'm more disconnected in the mirror than I am pictures. If I see myself in the mirror, I don't see it as much as far as how big I am. If I see myself in pictures, I definitely see it. I still don't look in the mirror really. Because it's not about appearance for me right now. It's just about living again. So I'm not worried about what I look like. And it never was about that for me. I mean, I almost died, last year. So, I mean, I'm just here saving my life is what I'm doing. I'm sure later when the pounds come off, I'll have the skin issue to deal with, some of that stuff will pop up, but as of right now, it's not on my brain at all.
Well, Carl, congratulations, because you probably did save your life, because April of 2019 you were knocking on death's door, and if you didn't make some changes, then you would probably not be alive. So congratulations on doing that, buddy. And although it's not easy and there's a long road ahead of you, you're still here with us, and your story is incredibly motivating and inspirational, because people can make changes just like you have done. So thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you.
So Janet, do you have some questions for Carl?
I do. So, I guess one of the goals of losing weight for you was survival, and how is that translating into your relationships with your family? I mean, how are they perceiving your progress, and how your friends, and is it increased activity, discussions, or what's happening with that?
Family wise, I think with my dad, things have improved a bit. Well, for various reasons, not just that, but we used to live together. We don't anymore, so that helps a lot. Not being in each other's space all the time. My brothers, be honest with you, I mean, our communication's basically how it's been. They're both pretty busy. Things are kicking back up, so their work's keeping them busy again. But they're both still supportive. My brother, when you mentioned that two people reached out to me and supported me in different ways, one was my older brother, and he was just asking me how things were going, and I was telling him, my struggles of not losing at the rate where I thought I should be, and he asked me like, well, where are you at? And I, said, I'm at that time, I think I was 45 pounds or something. It was a few days ago. And I said, I want to get to 50 by the 2-month mark. And he's like, how is that not a good rate? He goes, I don't understand. Like, how is that not a successful? And I was like, well, I guess it is if you look at it from the outside in. But like I said, I'm just not patient, and I just want things to go. I want it to be next summer already and able to actually go do a lot of things. And it's probably, I have, when you're stuck in that mindset of not being able to do anything for so long, and it starts to mess with you that you're not going to be able to do anything you're not going to be able to do anything again. I mean, that's where I was. I just succumbed to the fact that this is your life, and wanting something more for yourself wasn't in the cards when I was at my heaviest, and now it is, and I want it sooner than my body's doing it. But it'll even itself out, and it'll be worth it when I get to it.
Absolutely. So, Tosha, do you want to comment on the body dysmorphia issue a little more, and Carl not wanting to look at himself in the mirror? I'm going to assume that goes away, because it seems like you don't have a problem with looking yourself in the mirror, because we see you on Facebook a lot, and that's a good thing. So, can you comment on that a lot? Because I'm going to guess that, when you were at your heaviest, you didn't want to look in the mirror either. So.
No, I didn't. So, and then I want to come back to Carl's bucket list of things that he has planned to do.
Right.
Once you're more mobile, Carl, I'm super excited to hear, what's your first thing you want to go do? But so we'll go to the body dysmorphia first. So, when I was at my heaviest, Carl, I didn't look at myself in the mirror either, because what happened is my inner critic would come out, and my inner critic would just degrade me. She would call me names. How did I let myself get this fat? Why am I doing this to myself? And I was such a superstar, with work. And then I couldn't figure out why I couldn't get my crap together dieting. Why can't, you can do this so well, but why can't you do this? So Carl, do you have that internal battle that goes on with yourself as you're losing and trying to recognize yourself as you're seeing the changes in your face, and you're seeing the changes in just your overall, body structure? Do you have those thoughts that kind of cross your mind, or are you just identifying with yourself along the whole process because this is about health for you?
Right now it's a health thing for me. I have internal conversations with myself, going through therapy before this process. I think a lot of people struggle with not thinking they deserve happiness, and that brings self-sabotage, that brings in everything, in eating habits and relationships and all of that. So before, I would always self-sabotage anything if I screwed up. So I told you on one of the podcasts that I went to Chicago for the Biggest Loser resort, and I was there for a month, lost 45 pounds, and came back and continued the program. But what I would do is every Friday I would weigh in, and if it was a good weigh-in, I'd head right to Moses Lake, go get fast food. That was my reward. So I rewarded myself with the stuff that was hurting me before. And now I weigh every day, so I'm not rewarding myself because I'm seeing a bigger picture, which is probably why the frustration, because I still have 300 something, close to 300 pounds that I want to lose. So that's a long journey. But I do have those conversations internally with myself I need to tell myself that it's going to be worth it. I'm worth it. But right now, as far as anything goes, it's just a health thing for me. Because it's still new. It's still a new process as far as this surgery, and my body's not really, it is responding, but it's not used to what I'm doing to it yet. And so I don't know if that really answered your question, but.
How long did you go through counseling before you had your surgery? Because I had mine in Mexico, so I had no counseling before my surgery.
I didn't have surgery counseling. I had just trying to get to the root of why I became heavy. This was before I was even in the program to get the surgery. Counseling for surgery, I had to have one evaluation for make sure I was mentally okay. And so I had an interview with a psychologist, and she passed me. And then I got back in contact with the counselor I had previous, and we talked once, and she's been through the surgery, and she was just like, I don't really think you need ongoing counseling right now. He said you might later, but as of right now, just if something comes up, give me a call. But she said, I don't think you need, but this is like maybe 2 or 3 weeks after surgery. So I was just in this daze of what just happened to me, and I'm eating baby food and not really sure what's going on. So
I'm a huge supporter in your social network. So it sounds to me like you have your doctor, you have your counselor who's there when you need her. Then you have your family support, right? And so are you finding that your network is growing, that your support network is growing? Have you gotten any negative feedback from people about the amount of weight loss or how fast you're losing it, or just having bariatric surgery in general? Or are you finding that your support network is growing nicely?
I had a pretty big, Facebook. The people that follow my story on there have always been real positive. I've had 1 or 2 people that are like, I think you can do this without surgery. And I said, well, I also hit 713 pounds without surgery and external help. So I'll go ahead and take a different path this time and see how that goes. But overall, 99% has been completely positive and supportive, and don't even try to give me tips because no one really knows. The majority of people don't know what bariatric surgery entails. And I have a few friends that have had it that have reached out to me and just told me their story. Don't be discouraged, and it'll happen. Like, one said it takes a couple of months and all of a sudden your body will just start dropping, and it's like, I'm kind of looking forward to those days. It's like, be like the first couple of weeks, but so, yeah.
Well, still 50 pounds over 2 months. I mean, that's a pound a day. And, Tosha can comment on this more, but, speaking of network and speaking of, just the right connections, I'm glad that we connect you with Tosha because she is an expert in this area and she can help you along the way. Because I can't imagine going through this surgery and not really having somebody that's really experienced it, that has a lot of experience and expertise in the area to, to help navigate it. I can't believe having somebody with that you, you have to have a support group. I would sure think. You have a comment about that, Tosha?
Absolutely. I just, in my membership, we just went through curating our social media. So basically cleaning up anything that doesn't make you feel good. So a lot of times in our weight loss journey, because social media is very big, right? So Instagram, Facebook, what we'll do is we'll compare ourselves to somebody who's like us, but they're not us. So we're all losing weight at different rates. We're all living life in different ways. Our body, somebody may, be kind of look like me, but she may be 10 years older than me, right? But we'll still compare ourselves to these results. So one of the exercises that we went through was actually curating our social media and making it positive. So when I left or closed out of my Facebook account, I left feeling good about myself, not feeling horrible about myself, because I'm comparing myself to what I think the way things should happen, and they're not happening that way, or the way that I should look, or my skin should look, or my hair should look. We'll compare ourselves to all these different factors, but she's not me, or Carl, he may not be you, right? And so we get out of our social media feeling like crap again about ourselves because we're comparing ourselves. And so we went through and we cleaned up everything, like people who don't support you, groups that you don't want to be in, and just like cleaned it up, because having a large, well, I don't even necessarily know large, but a good social support network from your friends, your family, people on social media that you don't even know, that are interested in your journey and like to follow you, and they're your supporters, versus people who, and these comments may or may not come, Carl, will, criticize you for taking the easy way out. And it's not an easy way. If I was successful at dieting, I would have dieted. I wasn't. So I took the next step to gain control back of my life, right? And Carl did the same thing for his health. And you'll get people who will make you feel crummy about making that decision, but that was the best decision for me. And that was the best decision for Carl. It's not necessarily the best decision for everybody, But along the way, we have to really focus on our habits and behaviors and feeling good about ourselves and watching things that crept in, because there was a reason why we ate to the point that I was over 300, Carl was over 700. There were reasons why we did that. And it's so important during your journey that you have people to help you along the way so that you can recognize why you did certain behaviors. Because if you don't, they don't change and they'll come back in.
Yeah.
So speaking of those behaviors, Carl, when you were on the TV show and you did that little deserted island deal, you said you rewarded.
It wasn't a TV show. It was just the business program. It was.
That's right.
Yeah, it wasn't televised or anything. It was their model of losing weight, and it was just a resort that you went to.
Perfect. Thank you for correcting me on that. So you said you'd weigh and you'd lose weight, and then your reward would be you come home and eat fast food. Now, my guess is, my ignorance on bariatrics, so Tosha and Carl help me. My guess is that would be impossible to do right now. Is that correct?
No, not impossible at all.
You could do it?
I could do it, not as much.
But you
I'm surprised at what I can eat right now, actually.
Okay.
My the total amount of food I can eat is a little surprising. I mean, I'm not overdoing it, but if I wanted to have a hamburger somewhere, I could eat it.
But would you get sick? Would you?
No.
Possibly? No. Okay. All right.
I've had hamburger at home with not hardly anything on it, just the meat and like a thinwich bun type thing. But
yeah.
and I'm full. Don't get me wrong, I'm full after it. But before, 2 Big Macs, a double quarter pounder of cheese, no problem.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
And Shawn, the surgery is just a tool, right? It's just a tool.
Right.
Carl's like me, he had the sleeve, so it just reduced our stomach size. It doesn't, what we put in our mouth can still go in our mouth, just the quantity is lower, but then in an hour you could eat a little bit more. So you could go back to that,
okay. Right.
Big,
right.
Whatever. But it's just a tool. But it's whether we choose to do fast food or we choose to say, you know what, that was what I did that got me to 713 pounds. That's not what I do today after the surgery. So then it comes down to choice.
Yeah.
Right. So Janet, you had some questions medically about what's going on with Carl?
So Carl, prior to the surgery, you had quite a life-shaking event where basically it shook you to the core to decide that, this was going to put me in the ground if I didn't change. So you got past that, and I'm just curious as to see what has improved in your overall health as far as any disease states or medication, or how you perceive your overall health right now.
I don't know, because doctor's appointments are kind of hard to come by. I'm going to go get blood work done within the next couple of weeks. I'll have my 3-month checkup so I can look at all my levels and stuff. But as far as, I haven't had any doctor's appointments or checkups to know. I'm still on the same medicines. I haven't changed anything for that. So as far as like numbers and hard facts, I can't give any of those. I checked my blood pressure and it's basically kind of the same as what it was, which is low, really low actually. So they have talked about taking me off some of I have 2 blood pressure medicines. They talked about at least reducing them. But as far as anything else, like I don't have any test results or anything to go off of to see if anything's improving. I would assume they are, but I can't tell you any numbers or be truthful about any of that.
So Tosha, is that fairly common? 8 weeks out, when they had medical issues, especially beforehand, to not have a follow-up with their doctor? Is that pretty common? What's the usual routine?
No, it's not. I mean, usually you're following up, the first couple weeks.
I had a 2-week follow-up. I had a month follow-up. Then my next one's 3 months.
Perfect. Okay. All right. I just wanted to.
What I'm saying is they didn't do any blood work. They just talked to me to see how I was doing.
Okay.
But they haven't done any tests.
Different too is your PCP versus your surgeon. You have different appointments because Your primary is the one who probably puts you on your blood pressure medicine.
He put me on my blood pressure medicine. I'm having my 3-month follow-up with the surgeons, and the other 2 appointments were with my surgeons. But
and it's important to follow up with both your surgeon and your primary, because you're losing weight so drastically that you may be able to get pulled off your medication. So you don't want to be taking, and Shawn can address this one better than I can, taking medications that you don't need because they can cause adverse side effects, because now your blood pressure may be restoring to normal, but yet you're taking blood pressure and it could be dropping you below. So Shawn, you guys are better equipped to answer that question than I am with medications and not needing them.
Yeah, and so thanks for clearing that up, Carl, is that you did have follow-up with your surgeon, but from what I understand, you didn't have follow-up with your primary care doctor who was prescribing your blood pressure medications and, treating your other disease states before surgery. That, to me, I'm kind of a little bit surprised about. That's why I asked the question. I would think that I think Tosha was kind of alluding to this. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but you probably should have been following up with them just as much as you're following up to your surgeon. So probably 2 weeks after, 4 weeks after, and then 8 weeks. My concern with your blood pressure is, Carl, I'm glad you're checking it. That's a great thing that you're monitoring it. I'm super excited about that. And you say it's low. My concern is if it gets too low, you can get dizzy and then you can fall, and that could be catastrophic. So
that's what my doctor told me. It's at the same level that it was pre-surgery.
Okay.
When I lost my weight, which is low. I mean, I checked it the other day, and you're gonna say, yeah, that's low. You need to probably do something. It was 95/55 was my blood pressure.
I'm surprised you're not dizzy on that, but your body has probably compensated, and you're doing okay there. So, but it does.
And they told me because they don't know which medicine to take me off, is what my doctor was saying. So he says as long as you're not getting dizzy, lightheaded, your energy's kind of where you need it to be. They said we just want to kind of wait it out right now until it gets lower and you start having issues. I think it's low. I think it's too low right now, but they know about it.
And what ended you up in the hospital was your congestive heart failure, correct?
Blood clots and congestive heart failure.
And okay. And so how is that all doing? How is your heart failure doing, and how the blood clots are resolved, I'm guessing? So tell me a little bit about that.
The heart issue was corrected, and my heart was really strong 6 months after the episode. They said it was temporary due to the blood clots, the heart failure, and they did the test on it, and it was back to full function. It didn't enlarge, so he said he was really excited about the results. In fact, like 6 months after I had that test, or I had the episode in the hospital, he said you could have surgery tomorrow and I wouldn't have any issue with it. So that's corrected itself. I'm assuming blood clots. I'm on blood thinner medicine. I'm on Xarelto. So they said they're going to try to reduce that after a year of taking it. Reduce it in half. Then after that, they said probably take me off of it. So.
Well, and especially as you lose weight and you become more mobile, you'll be less susceptible to blood clots. So
yeah.
I'm super excited that you caught your heart. You went to the doctor and went to the hospital with your heart failure before you had permanent damage. That's super exciting. And just a reminder that, the earlier the intervention you get, the better, because that could end up in a very, very sad, bad story. So you are. I
almost feel like my body betrayed me by not giving me warning signs before that. Because, I mean, like we were talking about, I didn't have whatever the things you needed to qualify for. I mean, what qualified me is I needed knee replacement. Not my size, not my BMI, not my, pre-diabetes, none of that. I needed new knees. So that's what approved me for the surgery. And if you can get up to 700 pounds before your body says, hey, you're not going to be here if you keep doing that, that's kind of feels like my body didn't have a warning system was kind of screwed up.
Well, I think it's a reminder to us as healthcare professionals, and Jan and I talk about this a lot on our podcast, is that, you know, numbers aren't black and white. Whether it be your blood pressure is a good example. I mean, honestly, most people with a blood pressure like yours, they couldn't stand up. I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
they would fall over. So it's a perfect example. For whatever reason, you fall outside of the norms, which we're all unique individuals. So a lot of us fall out of the norm. So whether it be cholesterol, I mean, from what I remember, you didn't have any hypercholesterolemia, right? You didn't have high cholesterol, right?
When I got it checked, it was 140.
Yeah, very, very uncommon for somebody with your kind of conditions. You didn't have diabetes yet. Now, but here again, how do we measure diabetes? We measure it by blood glucose only, and that's the gold standard. So they probably measured hemoglobin A1C to average your blood glucose over 90 days. My guess is they didn't check your insulin level. My guess is your insulin level was off the chart. And that is what, because you are insulin resistant. Obviously, you had some kind of metabolic problem going on, or you wouldn't be 700 pounds. And that's why it really is frustrating in the traditional healthcare system, because we're also black and white. And it's like, oh, you're normal. I don't know what to tell you. You're normal. And you're a perfect example, Carl. So it's too bad you had to get that far, but I'm glad that you're turning that around. So kudos to you.
Here's another example of black and white. When I got out of the hospital, I think I went back for a checkup or something. I can't remember the timeline, but they were checking my INR levels because they had me on warfarin first.
Yep.
And they wanted you between 2 and 3. And so they checked my blood at the hospital in Spokane. I drove home, or I came home. They called me about 2.5 hours later and says, your level's at 8. Go to the emergency room right now. If you start bleeding, you're not going to stop. So, of course, I'm freaking out. And I had just taken another dose of warfarin because it's a nighttime medicine. I go to the emergency room in Ephrata. My level then was 8.9. They said, we can't touch you unless you're at a 9. Like 1 point.
I get it. I get it. We hear it all the time. Janet, do you want to discuss normal lab levels versus optimal levels?
Right. So, unfortunately, in our system today, we can't decide on a level of common sense that, you know, we're treating numbers, we're not treating patients, and labs are tools. It's no different than your surgery is a tool. Labs are tools to help us make decisions, but practicing medicine takes you to a different art level. And, you know, I'm flabbergasted sometimes when I hear that people can't be treated because their level is, you know, it's almost there, but not quite. And so, is
that more about legal reasons for the hospital?
I think some of it can be legal, but Carl, honestly, I think some of it is that providers need to pay attention to what is actually happening for a patient, because what might be normal for one is not normal for somebody else. And that's when you have to look at your client and your patient and decide, you know, do I intervene now or do I wait? And that comes down to being a clinician, because, you know, we can look at numbers all day long, but a number that's not the patient in front of us, you know. There's many labs out there that, you know, the normal range is large. But if there's symptoms, if you are bleeding, treat. You know, if you're that close, you know, there's a point where we have to get over the number and actually take care of a patient, I guess, is where I am stuck with it, because, you know, many times throughout our training, we're taught, you know, that number is just a snapshot in time, you know, and that time lapse between, you know, being safe and unsafe is maybe very short. So good thing that you were in the ER, but, you know, it's too bad that we have went to that extreme that, you know, oh, no, I can't take care of that because it's right here. And that's.
Yeah, it was two totally different attitudes. The deaconess in Spokane called me and acted like if I had a hangnail, I would have been dead. I go to Ephrata and they said, well, if you're not bleeding or it's not at 9, we can't do anything. Just go home and try not to bleed until your levels get down. And I get home and I sit down right where I'm at right now. And right when I sit down, I get a bloody nose for 45 minutes.
Of course.
And I was like, do I go back? What are they going to do if I go back? It'll probably be done by the time I get there. Then they'll just send me home again. But yeah.
Well, I'm sorry that happened to you, Carl. And unfortunately, that story is all too common. And here's what one of the reasons I think that happens is that doctors and healthcare providers, they let insurance companies dictate patient care. And I'm sure that when Ephrata said that, they knew that they wouldn't get paid for that diagnosis unless you were at a 9. And so they couldn't admit you. 8.9 wasn't good enough unless you were bleeding. So, there again, the clinicians are letting a health insurance company dictate care. And that's something that just got to stop. In fact, I wrote a book about it. The book is called Sickened, How the Government Ruined Healthcare and How to Fix It. It's got a 6-step solution on how to fix our healthcare system. It's available on Amazon. It's on Kindle form now, and go to Amazon and download that. Also, this year it's going to be available on audiobook and on paperback. So stay tuned for that. So, Carl, thank you for that story. That's a reminder to a lot of patients that they what's going on behind the scenes. And one of the goals of our podcast is to educate and empower consumers that they need to be responsible and take charge of their own health care. So thank you for that story, Carl. So Tasha, go ahead, Carl.
Even the fact of what it took to get me qualified for that surgery shows how messed up it is.
For sure. Yeah.
Who would look at me at 713 pounds? Oh, no, I don't. He's not. He doesn't need that. It
just goes to show you again, the numbers are black and white. If you would have had, I think we were discussing on the first time you were on our podcast, if you would have had diabetes and you would have had, some other underlying diseases, they would have done it. But you fell outside those norms, so unfortunately, you had to suffer for that, and that's really too bad. Fortunately,
I was way too healthy for surgery.
Yeah, and fortunately, this is scary and sad to say, but you could have died. Fortunately, you lived, but that rationing could have actually killed you. So that's a really sad state of affairs. So good thing you turned your life around. So, yeah. Tasha, do you have any comments about that?
I do. So 2 points on that. So 1, too, is our employers also dictate bariatric surgery. So I worked for a large bank, and they didn't allow bariatric surgery as part of their plans, although I had medical issues going on that qualified me for it. My employer, it was out of the plan. So that's why I went to Mexico and paid for mine. Number 2, Carl, I would encourage you, because you're going to be going through blood work, right? Like 3 months, 6 months, usually a year, then kind of like every year after that. What I personally did, because I'm like Shawn, I do come from a medical family, so I believe in being your own advocate as well. Is what I used to do, and what I still do is, and even though I'm 7 years out, I would get copies of my lab results. And then when I would get my next lab results, I would compare, because I wanted to see my trends. Because a lot of us don't absorb like the next person does. I may have an absorption issue with a certain vitamin, you may not. And so what I wanted to do is make sure that I wasn't trending down, even though they were telling me I was within optimal levels. Right. But I wanted to see what my trend was. So I would encourage you, as you get your lab results done, just ask for a copy from the lab, and then just keep them, and then you see what you're doing.
I get them through my chart, so they automatically send them to me.
That's
good.
That's
read them, but
yeah. Well, that's a great point, Tasha. And Carl, if you want to share those with me, I can go over those with you and help you interpret them. And we would love to have you on the podcast again, maybe in a few months or more, to kind of see what those trends are and how your medical issues are going. So, go ahead, Janet. Do you have a question?
Well, I don't have a question. I just kind of have a comment. I'm glad Tasha brought this up to you, Carl, because many times we do not look at our labs and our nutrient levels as being really important. And they're critically important, because even just during development of our body, certain nutrients, are key. So, and as we live our life and as we go from our day to day, if we're missing nutrients, we can feel really bad. And to avoid those things, it's really easy to add those back in if you know they're being depleted, or you're not absorbing them as well, because obviously the surface area has decreased with the surgery. So that is something that Tosha pointed out, that's really going to be important in your journey, and probably even 7 years out. Tosha, you are looking at your labs to make sure that, hey, I'm not missing this, because simple things like nutrients, vitamins, minerals can be really important. We've had patients that we've treated for years with replacement therapy, and they weren't quite feeling right, and then it was like, oh, it was their vitamin D, or it was their B12. And so we overlook these things very commonly in the healthcare industry. As providers, we don't clue into them, and so that could be very helpful in your journey.
Yeah, I'm really low on vitamin D. I know that. When I do look at my labs, I mean, you're right. They have this number of where, there's this graph, then there's these two arrows. You need to be in between those two arrows and you're fine, right? So, you look at them and I'm in between every arrow. So, hey, I must be doing good. But I know there's more to it than that.
Right. And that's what we talk. That's what we at Moses Lake Professional Pharmacy talk to our patients a lot about. Is that the difference between normal levels and optimal levels. Vitamin D is a perfect example. I am going to guess, Carl, it should come as no surprise. Your vitamin D level is probably not optimal. It's probably in the toilet for multiple reasons. You're not outside a lot. Vitamin D is produced in our skin in response to sunlight. You're not getting a lot of that right now. Hopefully next summer you will be. And, when you do have bariatric surgery, you have absorption issues. And vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. It is a little bit harder to be absorbed. You have to take it with a little bit of food or something like that to make it the best absorbed. So my guess is your vitamin D is not optimal. It may be normal. Here's one of the things I suggest, Carl. When you get your blood test, and let's realize this, just like Tosha says, you need to be your own best advocate. You need to ask the doctors to do certain tests. Vitamin D is an important one. If there is one nutrient, one supplement you can take, I would suggest it be vitamin D, because it has so many benefits in the body. So make sure they test your vitamin D. Janet, are you on it now?
Yeah, but I can't take it right now because I can't have anything solid. So
did they tell you that?
But I take the bariatric vitamins that they recommend. I take those 4 times a day.
Okay, most of the time, multivitamins, I don't know the specific one you're on, do not have enough vitamin D. You have to supplement with vitamin D separately. Tosha, can you comment on why he couldn't take vitamin D because it's solid? I mean, can you take capsules?
No.
Should you be able to take capsules now?
Yeah, Carl, you're 2 months out?
Well, they tell me after 8 weeks you can start taking pills normally. You don't have to crush them anymore. So starting Thursday, I can start taking normal pills. But as of now, I crush everything.
I would make sure with your bariatric doctor, because I was allowed to start my medication almost immediately. So I would make sure on that.
I take all my medicine. I just have to crush it into powder form. So
yeah.
And
because our vitamins are so crucial. I mean, 7 years post-op, I knew something was wrong with my body, but my doctor, my primary, kept on telling me I was falling within optimal ranges. And I get I'm falling within optimal ranges, but I feel like crap. I'm telling you something is wrong. I ended up transitioning to a new doctor who specializes in women's health. Well, guess what was low? 7 years post-op. Well, this was 6 years post-op because I started with her last year. My vitamin D was extremely low, and my testosterone as a female was extremely low. And I'm beginning to start entering into the stages. So, make sure like Shawn was talking about vitamin D, our vitamins are so crucial. And a lot of bariatrics don't get that you might test fine, and then the next test you're testing extremely low. Vitamin D is one, and iron are the two. Those are the two that we tend to fall really, really low on.
Yeah.
Here's another tip too, Carl, coming from a pharmacist. You might not be able to swallow tablets without crushing them up. Realize capsules, a lot of vitamin D. I know the one we have at our pharmacy, it is in a capsule form. You can take that capsule, you can break it open, you can put it in water, you can eat it straight if you wanted to. It might not taste good. Vitamin D doesn't taste bad, actually. But you could sprinkle it on food, whatever. So realize if you do need something, there's multiple ways of getting it in your system, whether it be a liquid, a capsule, or a tablet. So I recommend people breaking open capsules all the time. It's a very easy way to get medication into your system. So
the ones I have are, I think they just look like a gel.
Liquid gel, yeah. It looks like that one might be. I'm guessing it's a prescription, and that is actually vitamin D2. I like vitamin D3 better. If you want
vitamin D3,
it is vitamin D3. Good.
Yeah. 500, Nina.
500 or 5,000?
5,000.
5,000. Good, because 5,000 every day is what most patients need, between 4,000 and 10,000 a day. So that's
What's
good.
the good level for vitamin D? I think I was at a 13.5 last time I was checked, and I needed to be 25ish.
Well, if you're at a 13.5, that's way low. Normal is 30 to 100. I will tell you what I really shoot for in my patients is over 60, so 60 to 100. If you were at 13.5, I'm guessing you weren't supplementing. Now, maybe you have some malabsorption issues for multiple reasons, and maybe you need a extremely high dose because you're never out in the sun. So it just depends.
I supplemented. They tested me. I was at 12.5. I took them for 3 months, and it raised it up a point to 13.
Yeah, you probably have some malabsorption issues. That's not uncommon. There's some other issues that we can fix to help that. Right now, you're in the middle of a lot of absorption type issues, so we're gonna have to figure out the right dose is. They might have to double or triple that dose in order to get your levels to optimal. But vitamin D is so important right now, and always it is always important.
Yeah, so, I'll definitely be talking to my doctor because I got to go get blood work. They're gonna check my potassium level because I was retaining water. I had a couple of days where I gained 5 pounds in 2 days, and I took a water pill and I lost 6 pounds, the next day. And so I'm absorbing water for some reason, probably because I wasn't drinking enough at the time, but they have me on Lasix now for a daily Lasix now, but.
Well, that'll get rid of your potassium. That's probably why they're checking your potassium too. Are you taking any extra potassium?
Yeah, they gave me potassium to take.
Good.
With it.
Okay.
So.
Perfect. All right. Well, we're wrapping up our hour and our podcast. Janet or Tosha, do you have any questions, comments for Carl or for our general listeners and viewers?
Carl, I think your weight loss is fantastic. I am obviously 100% pro bariatric surgery to gain control of our health and our lives back. I think your weight loss is fantastic. You should be very, very, very proud. I watch you on Facebook. I read your posts. I read people's comments as well. I think you're doing a great job. Just stay on top of your vitamins and your labs. I mean, that is so crucial, during this time. And don't ever not take them. Don't ever stop taking them. But I think you're doing a great job. And, coming from like 700 pounds, you're going to be going through so many changes with your body, from just being immobile to mobile, and muscles that you're going to start using muscles that you probably haven't really used before. And I'm super excited to hear about your bucket list, like all the things that you plan on doing once you hit certain weight thresholds, because you're right. When you said, I went to here, and when I lost weight, I would eat fast food. We can no longer do that as bariatric patients. We can no longer reward ourselves with food, because that is what got us obese. So by you rewarding yourself with like the things that you want to do on your bucket list, that's totally awesome. So super excited to see that on Facebook.
Hopefully concerts will be open up back next summer, so I can start doing that again.
Yeah, I sure hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what Tosha is saying. Carl, your journey is amazing. I know when we're in the midst of a walk, we don't always see how we encourage other people. And there's other people out there, Carl, that are watching, and they may not be commenting, but they're seeing your success. And, I'm very proud of you as well, Carl. I understand how serious this was for you. I've had clients that, their wake up call didn't happen, and they didn't make it. So I want to give you as much kudos and just keep going, Carl, because you never know, that person might show up someday and say, I watched you, Carl, and you inspired me. So keep going.
Thank you.
I love it. I love
The
it. Well,
biggest compliment I got was my daughter. I don't see my daughter a whole lot. She lives on the west side. She came over 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, and she didn't say anything to me, but she went home and told her grandma, "Dad's so happy now." Like, she could see the difference. And I don't notice it. I mean, I feel it, but to hear her know, to know that she sees the difference and sees the difference in me, that was pretty big.
well, I think, Carl, I can tell you from, I've only known you for a few months now, but, besides when we were in high school years ago, I just knew of you. But I can tell you, I can see a difference just from when we first interviewed you a few months ago. And, especially when you look at your pictures from April 2019, you were in the hospital.
Yeah.
I mean, your difference is night and day. I mean, you were knocking on death's door. Period.
And you should have interviewed me then and see the difference.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing the transition you've made. So you made a lot of progress, and it might seem slow to you, but hey, 150 pounds. I mean, kudos to you. That's awesome, and you have some good goals and those bucket lists. I like that. We had a gal on our podcast a few weeks ago, and she had a goal of losing some weight. One thing she wanted to do was ride a horse again and skydive, because when you skydive you have a weight limit, so she's got a goal to meet that weight limit so she can skydive. And I mean, what a wonderful goal to have, and it's very motivating. You have to have goals like that. All of us do.
I believe.
What's that?
245, I believe, is the weight limit for your first tandem jump out of a sky.
Yeah, and the company I'm sure every company's a little bit different. The company we were looking at was 220, but I'm sure they have exceptions too. So it's just great that you have goals, and I think all of us, whether we have weight loss goals or whether we've had bariatric surgery, we all have to have goals, because we got to keep living life. We're just not here putting in our time. We're just not here doing our time. We want to have a purpose in this life, and we want to have a passion for what we do. So thank you for encouraging and inspiring others, Carl. You're really an inspiration. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate those words.
Tosha and Carl, thank you for being on our show. You've been listening to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where we stream live every Monday, 1 to 2 p.m. right here on Facebook and the Moses Lake Professional Pharmacy YouTube site. We also are on most of the podcast forums, so iHeartRadio, iTunes, Google, all those. So tune in Thursday. You don't want to miss it. We have Ethne Nance. She is a specialist in medical billing. She is going to help us navigate the complicated billing system we have in medicine. Carl, you might want to tune into this, and you'll understand about some crazy things and why you have fell through the cracks. So you think you think those ICD-9 codes, you think those diagnosis codes, those doctors write for us are all for our own good? Think again. It's not for patient care at all. Here's an example. It's actually for research. And here's an example. If it was all about patient care, why is there a diagnosis code for being hit from a fallen space object? I'm not kidding you. There's a diagnosis code for that, which means it's not about patient care. It's about something else going on, and she is going to help us navigate the system, and she has a few ideas on how to fix it. So stay tuned for that Thursday. Well, yeah, that's not common, no. Stay tuned for that Thursday. She'll be streaming in at 8 o'clock a.m. I'm super excited for that. So you've been listening to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Thanks for listening.